Welcome to Rage Against the Mainstream, your full spectrum source for all things music, insight, and opinion. Today's date is August 15th, 2022. My name is Bill, and I'm joined here today with the one and only Michael.
Hello, everybody.
So welcome back for Season 5. I kind of say this for everyone, like, hey, welcome back for Season 5.
Season 5.
It's strange, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, 3, yeah, we've been doing it since 2019.
Through the pandemic, we all made it through.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember doing those, doing the episodes like remotely. That was horrible. But everything worked out, and we're good now. So, have you encountered anything new or interesting since the last time you've been on?
Well, I know we're going to talk about this both.
Yeah.
So it's probably the most interesting thing for both of us is Rush showing up.
Oh yeah.
And playing. That's the most interesting thing for me also.
Yeah.
Because it came out of nowhere.
Yeah. So if you don't know what we're talking about, on August 9th, South Park creators Trey and Matt, they did a 25th anniversary concert at Red Rocks in Colorado. And one of the main points of that evening was Primus playing, and they brought out some special guests. They brought out Eddie and Galax from Rush. Oh, yeah, Eddie and Galax. Alex and Getty from Rush, and they played Closer to the Heart, and it was incredible. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Primus, for the past couple of years, have been going out and touring as themselves, but the first part of their set is to be a Rush tribute. And if that has been a question for anybody, if you watch this video, you'll 100% understand why they do this.
It was such a surprise. It hit, and that's all. I did a show last night in North Jersey, and it's all everybody was talking about. Did you see the Rush video? Did you see the Rush video? They're talking about the Rush video.
Yeah.
Did you see the Rush video? And I just seen it, and I didn't really understand how it all came to be until somebody explained to me about Primus and the Rush tribute thing that they do, along with their regular stuff, and the bass player being one of the best bass players. And the fact that it was at Red Rocks, which is, probably the best outdoor amphitheater, if not concert venue in the country, because Rush had one of their last gigs. Rush actually played there, and when they were together, and it's just a beautiful venue, and to have it happen there, and for them to see them standing on stage together, the two of them next to each other again, it was just, I don't know how they did it without breaking up, but they did.
Yeah,
they had just had a blast doing it, which was great,
and it just sounded so incredible. I mean, obviously the sound of Neil Peart will always be missed, but right. In this particular situation, you can't help but be happy to see them two on stage playing these songs, because fans of the band and just regular music fans in general know that was never going to happen.
Right. We thought it was never going to happen, just the two of them playing,
yeah.
and here it happened. And the drummer nailed it, because that's what he does. And he even had the chimes.
Yeah, right.
For Closer to the Heart.
And I'm mad that I don't know the drummer of Primus's name, but he's incredible. He's just a great drummer. He's always been a great drummer. And I guess maybe doing these type of songs, like, it definitely shows the chops that he has, and the fact that no one skipped a beat at all. No. And you have to think of the immense pressure that has to be. Like, you're playing one of their biggest songs with them, and you're also taking the place of their departed bandmate and friend. It's just like it's just got to be like an unrealistic amount of pressure on one person.
Yeah, it's a combination of excitement and pressure. And you just got to take a big, deep breath and just go, let's just do it. Yeah. And then just dive right in and do it. And
well, the thing, too, that was really surprising to me is how well Les Claypool was able to sing like Geddy Lee.
Yeah.
Like, it was just...
You couldn't tell a difference.
Exactly. Like, if you weren't watching the video and seeing him singing, you would have no idea it was two people singing it at the same time. And, it was just incredible.
Yeah, and even had the same setup on stage. He had too many Moogs stacked on top of each other, just like Geddy Lee would have, and they keep. Yeah, it's the whole thing. It was great.
It was definitely a very good tribute to them. I mean, obviously it was all for South Park, but for that thing to happen there, like that just blew it up even bigger.
And if that was unrehearsed, which I guess it was, I don't think they rehearsed that.
No.
And for those two guys to walk up there unrehearsed and not playing with each other,
yeah,
but they played the song for 40 years. So everything just fell into place, and it's just that's, I guess that's the magic of music.
Yeah,
that just you had that connection, and
that or muscle memory.
Yes, yes.
I mean, they could both probably play that song with their eyes closed at this point,
right?
So,
but they probably were also nervous.
Oh yeah,
about being on stage in front of all those people, all of a sudden being shoved back out there, and okay, I'm playing this song. I haven't played it in 7 years, and with one of my lifelong friends, and now I got to play in front of all these people. So they were feeling the pressure too.
Oh yeah.
And even though they played in front of hundreds of thousands of people, the whole thing was they're all probably feeling the pressure, but then it was, well, relax and have fun, and let's just do it, and that's the way it came out.
Yeah.
It looked like everybody was having fun.
And that place was packed. And that video where they show the entire crowd, that place was filled.
Yeah, Red Rocks is such a great place. If you ever get a chance to visit it, right outside of Denver, it's a natural place. It's built right into the rocks. It's a natural occurrence, and it was over 100 years ago they decided to make a music venue out of it. They used to have classical orchestras and opera singers.
It probably sounds incredible there.
Yeah, and it's the natural sound of the rocks on the sides holding the sound in, and it really is incredible.
Yeah, if any of you out there haven't seen it yet, I would suggest looking it up. Actually, I'm pretty sure if you just go on YouTube, it's what I did. I just typed in "Closer to the Heart." It's like the second or third video that pops up. We're about to see a resurgence in Rush.
I know.
Well, it's funny too because in the midst of everything, there was talks of Alex Van Halen doing something with Rush, and I don't know. I heard that, then this happened. I was like, I don't know. And like you were saying, they if they were unrehearsed, they were very, very good for being an unrehearsed band. But I mean that's just that's an entirely different thing. But I guess let's get into our music history for today. Today, August 15th in 1939, The Wizard of Oz premieres at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood. I forgot that movie was that old.
Did they have Dark Side of the Moon playing in the background?
I think it was culminating in the background at that point.
Yeah, because it's supposed to match up perfectly, so I wonder.
Well, yeah, I mean, Roger Waters or David Gilmour wouldn't have been born yet.
No,
right?
I think they were born in the 40s, right around World War II times. Right,
so it might have been in vitro.
Yes.
There was a
there's something going on.
Exactly.
Yeah, that they in vitro heard the movie and said, we're going to write a soundtrack for this movie. It's going to be the greatest album with the most weeks on the chart ever. Yeah, that's what we're going to do.
Speaking of Pink Floyd for a second, I mean, obviously this is not a political podcast and we have no political stance here. But did you hear about the Roger Waters thing? And
I saw it.
And how he's under fire right now? Yeah,
I saw it on YouTube. You can catch it on YouTube. He was just in Philadelphia. He's doing Madison Square Garden. He's doing the New York part of his tour now. The intro. You're talking about the intro?
Oh, no. I'm talking about how he agrees with the Ukraine war. And
oh, yeah. I
read that and I was like, if that wasn't a PR nightmare, I don't know what was.
Right, and it all ties into his opening for his concert.
Oh.
If you look on YouTube, there's a number of them there. He opens his latest tour. The stage is black and up on the screen. If you are bothered or disturbed by his view in politics, it's time to go. Just go up to the pub.
Oh, wow.
Or something just leave.
That's crazy.
Because he's so political that it's part of his show, and if you don't like it, leave. That's basically what he said.
Well, Pink Floyd was always like a pseudo-political band in a sense, right?
Yeah, they were so psychedelic in the beginning, and but yes, they're political I think in more of a subtle way.
Yeah, not like a Rage Against the Machine type.
Yeah, if like the whole Animals album was kind of about like society. If you really
wasn't the Wall was like a politically centered album.
Yes, the Wall was about isolation, all that. I think it was because he lost his father in World War II, and so ever since then, his whole life has been about
politics,
about no war, about war. But what did he say about the Ukraine? That was such.
He said he stands with Russia in the Ukraine war, and Joe Biden is a war criminal.
Right.
And I'm sitting there. I read this and I was like, why would he say this right before a tour? But yeah, nonetheless,
he says that about every American president.
Oh, really?
Yes, he said that about every single one of them.
That's funny.
Yeah, he's about controversy and about politics, and that's what they said in the beginning of the concert. Came right up on the screen. They said, first, turn your cell phones off. Don't take your cell phones. Just sit back and enjoy the concert. And if his opinion on politics bothers you, go up to the effing pub now and leave. That's what it said right up there on the screen.
I'm gonna have to watch this.
Yes, right up there on the screen, and then he comes walking out.
That's insane.
To start the show. Yeah, it's
well, it definitely drew interest.
Yes,
into it, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we got going on in 1969?
Okay, 1969 Woodstock. This was day one of the performances. This is when it actually opened, and Richie Havens, as I don't know if everybody knows this, but he's the one that opened the concert. It was supposed to be Sweetwater, but everybody was delayed on the freeway.
I wonder why.
The New York Thruway was basically shut down by people trying to get there. So they got there late. Everybody was getting there late. So Richie Havens was one of the only ones there. So it was like, go ahead. So he basically opened it up. Then it was Tim Hardin and Joan Baez, who was 6 months pregnant at the time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
That's insane. And just to think like what Woodstock would to become, and it's such like an iconic thing. It's all from some like in a farmer's field.
Yeah, you talk about politics. This was the turning point of music and politics and how it mixed together, and the whole counterculture movement, and it basically put music. Before this, it was you had the Beatles, and the Beatles they didn't really sing a lot about politics. They sung a lot
happy
of
poppy songs.
It was songs about falling in love and here's your girl and you lost your girl, and then they did the Tax Man, which was kind of a little bit, but maybe in a subtle way, but Woodstock made music a part of everyday life, with politics and the power of that music, that Woodstock made music become such a power in day-to-day life. Bands like Crosby, Stills and Nash and Joni. Who else was there?
Creedence was there.
Yeah, all these bands that were there, and there's so many great bands that turned down. They said, it's not going to be anything. We're not going to go there. Jethro Tull turned it down. Zeppelin, they all said, nah, we're going to go do something else. This doesn't sound like it's going to be anything.
Yeah, right.
and it's turned out,
I would still like to be able to get a hold of the sound recordings of Creedence at Woodstock.
Well, Creedence, yes, it was Creedence. That day was The Dead, Creedence, Janis Joplin, And Santana, that Santana, well, that's the second day, but Santana, it created that type of music that I don't know if you call it Latin or whatever, the rock and the Latin combined. It kind of brought that to the forefront. It did so many things for so many people.
Yeah.
I mean, the Who's performance, it brought everybody that was there. Joe Cocker just knocked him dead. And it brought him, made him a star. Everybody that was there turned him into a star.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they even had Sha Na Na, the 50s doo-wop band.
That's fun.
It was quite the place. I was up in Lake George doing a gig. I think it was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I was going to stop here on the way home. It was a Sunday, and I looked at the map because right now at the site, I mean, it's not, Woodstock is a town in New York, but it's not where the concert happened.
Yeah.
Woodstock is farther south. That's just where they had their headquarters. But I looked on the map, and the traffic around the concert location, because they have a museum there and a small little venue that they have bands and everything there. It's a whole arts thing, arts center, music and arts center. And the traffic, I looked on the traffic app, and it was just, you couldn't get close to the place because it was a really nice day. It was a Sunday, and I said, I'll spend hours just trying to get in the place. So
yeah, right.
I didn't stop there. So, but it's definitely, it's on my bucket list to actually go to the site and stand in the field if possible.
It's gotta be such I guess from not ever being there, the only thing I could probably relate it to is like being at the bottom of like Niagara Falls.
Yeah, it's definitely a historic site. The energy that was there, all the how many people were there, and there was no violence.
Mm-hmm. Some
people died of drug overdoses, but then other babies were born.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there was no violence. It was.
They had to wait 30 years for that one.
Yeah, right. And to get all those people together and to have that happen, it was definitely a turning point in music. And if you ever get a chance to watch the movie.
Oh, yeah.
The movie's great, too.
And if you want any more information on Woodstock, go back to like season 1 of the show, or 2. I think it's season 1. I think we were running out of ideas, and we did like a 3-part series on Woodstock, 69, 94, and 99. Oh.
Yeah, I don't know why after 94 they actually did 99.
Well, it was probably a cash grab at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like,
I don't know, but I think there's a documentary coming out on Woodstock 99 about how like horrible it was, or like how it just turned like from happy to extremely violent.
Yeah.
But yeah, when that comes out, I definitely want to see that. Speaking of violent, in 1983, guitarist of the Ramones, Johnny Ramone, was beaten in a street fight, and he had to undergo brain surgery the same day. The incident actually inspired the next Ramones album, Too Tough to Die.
1983.
Yeah.
Where was that? It
was in New York.
It was in New York? Okay.
Yeah. It's insane.
I know. Did they catch the people, or was it?
It was a guitar player from another band.
Oh.
Or was a member of another punk band, and they got into a fight, and he got the shit beat out of him.
I mean, the Ramones, I listened to the Ramones when I was in high school in the 70s. That's how long they had been around.
Yeah.
And it was so different and so much fun to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great. I've always liked the Ramones. They were so much fun.
I have a soft spot for the Ramones. I mean, I'm not a giant punk guy. That's Steve. But I've always liked the Ramones. I always thought they were like a good, like, middle of the ground punk band.
That's when it started in the... I said, well, maybe not the mid 70s, more towards the later, probably 76 was when I first heard them, and then it got to kind of split off. You had the Cars,
yep,
which were, I guess, became new wave, and then there was still the punk. So punk kind of branched off into different things.
Yeah.
And the New York Dolls and all that stuff. And yeah, so that whole punk movement in New York City. But that's a shame that it had to happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it just adds to the allure of the Ramones and their street credibility. If I Want to Be Sedated ever hurt their rep.
Well, now aren't all the original members gone now?
Yes. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're all dicks. I think Joey Ramone died in like 2005 or something along those lines, and I'm pretty sure they're all dead at this point. While you're reading the next one, I'll take a look real quick.
Okay, in 1991, 750,000 people attended Paul Simon's free concert in Central Park, New York City.
I figured that I picked that one because I figured you had a decent bit to talk about with that one.
Well, my memory is that they actually got that many people in the Central Park. But yes, again, it was another. Paul Simon was very influential in music and got the world to listen to, I guess what you call, got the mainstream to listen to world music, I guess you would call it, listening to other types of music than just what we're used to listening to in England and America. More African music mixed in, the drums, the vocal, the chanting, was all part of his Graceland album, which really kind of changed history a little bit. The same thing with Peter Gabriel. Peter Gabriel did the same thing.
Oh, really?
Yes, he brought in world music into his music, with the So album, and it just opened up everybody's mind who was just used to listening to rock and roll and I guess I don't know if you want to call it white music, but English music.
Okay,
and then all of a sudden they brought in all these different, mixed in all of these African rhythms and the singing and the chanting, and it was like, and it all mixed together. And he brought them all up on stage, did the whole, and it was just, and Peter Gabriel's done the same thing, and it just opened up everybody's mind to the other types of music in the world that were out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a big event. Paul Simon was very big in new things, innovative, something completely different than what was going on. And so this was big because he was very popular at this time.
Yeah, I actually read, I saw that for the track listing for the actual album, I think side one or, the first disc or whatever was, I think like 63 minutes, and the second side was like 55 minutes. So he had just 2 straight hours of playing. And I believe he played Call Me Al twice. And he had Chevy Chase come out.
Chevy Chase come out for it, yes. Yes. It was, it was quite an event.
Yeah, I can only imagine what 750,000 people in Central Park is like.
Yeah. I wonder how what about the bathroom situation?
Probably similar to Woodstock 99.
Yeah, that's just...
So, getting into our main topic here for this week, you had been pestering me to watch this movie, and I finally sat down and I got to watch it. Coincidentally, it was the same night that you were playing a show.
Okay.
The movie is the 2018 documentary, What is Classic Rock? Directed by Daniel Sarkisian. Runtime of hour and 32 minutes. He's a Canadian filmmaker, and it brings up the question, what is classic rock? I mean, I did not get much out of this. I feel like this was all stuff that we had previously talked about. Like even me and you and everyone else, we had talked about this. The one gripe that I had with this movie, though, was Twisted Sister. Like when JJ French was talking, and he had said he was basically like acting like the gatekeeper to like classic rock. It was like, oh my God. It was like, calm down, JJ. You're barely a gatekeeper of like hair metal. But it did raise some interesting questions though, and it does bring it into like a topic of conversation to where it makes you wonder, is like the older generation of these, you know, rock stars back then, are they like the gatekeepers into this, you know, exclusive classic rock thing? Or is it just, you know, what the definition of it is, with it being bands basically from 1960s to 2000? What's your stance on this one, Michael?
Well, there's two sides to it. Some critics say that classic rock was created as a money-making scheme it has to do with Western culture, to create this genre of classic rock to continue to sell these artists and to promote these artists long after their peaks. Now, on the fan side of where I am, I look at it as classic rock being that era. For me, it's mostly the 60s and the 70s, from the Beatles until like 1980, 83 at the most, is a time where an album was a work of art that was done as a single, you know, as a thought, so that we're gonna record an album, and it's not gonna just be a bunch of songs. It's gonna be an album of how we are feeling at this time, and it's all about. I always think music is about emotion, and there was a lot of innovation going on in music at that point, at that time, and that all these different bands were coming out, and they all sound a little different, and they were like creating their own genres. This is how I think it is, and it's where a lot of these genres were created, and that's my definition of classic rock, was the era of rock when most of the genres were created that we still listen to today, from hard rock, soft rock, the new wave. There was heavy metal. You know, you had Black Sabbath and the beginning of the heavy metal movement. The pop. You had the vocal acts like Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, political kind of acts. Then you had American rock with Aerosmith and Bruce Springsteen. Those kind of things. Storytellers. Yeah, it's like when all of these things were new. Yeah. And to me, that's what classic rock was about. It's when all these things were created. Then once you hit after 1980, or their 80s rock was more synthesizer, more electronic, and there wasn't a lot of kind of one group. The 80s were kind of one group of music. So to me, like after 83, all the innovation kind of leveled out a little bit. Yeah. And then you got into the hip hop, everything as you got into the 90s and the grunge. But to me, classic rock is when most of the innovation was done, and it laid the groundwork for everything that came later. Okay, yeah. I agree with that. Well, there's actually a couple different. There's not one answer. If you go online, there's millions of answers. But the top ones that I was able to figure out is classic rock is music that's associated with the album era from 1960 to 2000. I actually agree with you in the whole album thing going away well before the year 2000. Another explanation is a radio format developed for album-oriented rock, for the format of that in the early 80s. And then classic rock is a movement. So I guess we could, in a way,
kind of culminate these three things together, because our local radio classic rock station, 102.9 MGK, shout out to those guys if you're in the Delaware Valley.
Yes.
I've been noticing that I'm hearing a lot of bands from the early 90s. I'm hearing Alice in Chains on there. I'm hearing Pearl Jam. I'm hearing Nirvana. And
Metallica.
Yeah, and Metallica. Yes. I think I've heard Nothing Else Matters on MGK a few times. And it makes you wonder now, are these bands starting to be considered classic rock, or is it the fact of, like, if you go to like the DMV and you have a car that's 25 years old, it's considered a classic at this point, or historic. Is this kind of is this kind of like the movement for these particular bands? Like, after 25 years, you've done your run, now you're, put out the pasture in classic rock radio.
It could be a moving target.
Yeah.
The classic rock becomes a moving target. As people get older, are the Beatles considered oldies?
Yeah, no. It was funny. I was talking to Nicole about that this morning.
Yeah, or the Beatles still relevant as a rock band?
Yeah.
Or are they? No, they should be on the oldie station.
Yeah.
And I think with the classic rock stations, they're starting so they can expand their listening audience.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting playing more grunge, more metal that was in the 90s.
Yeah. Now, I mean, from everything that I was able to read and what I actually gathered from the documentary, it was, basically that album-oriented rock. Like you were saying earlier, with you had a cohesive unit, and this is that. And, that died out in the 80s, in the early 80s. And I would have to agree with you with that being like a good criteria for being a classic rock band. And that's why I believe that classic rock couldn't, or that's why classic rock could be a genre, because now you don't have that, everything's singles, everything's, EPs. You don't have albums anymore. So I do believe that classic rock, I mean, I think I'm talking in circles. I think I'm forgetting what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, maybe the innovation, and the making of an album to make a statement.
Yes.
All the bands, when they sat down and said, "We're going to do an album," it's a statement.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're saying it's just singles.
Yes.
There's no innovation. There's no. I'm going to say everything sounds the same, because it doesn't, but
it's stale.
It's stale. Yes, right. I mean, Southern rock was created,
mm-hmm.
and there's still Southern rock.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen to a Southern rock song today, it's going to sound like Leonard Skinner.
Yeah.
And it's like there was all these genres created, and there were still more created, but there hasn't been much more done with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's come to a point to where you have people pushing the envelope everywhere, but it's almost to the point to where we're kind of capped at like what we're able to produce as, normal human beings without getting a computer involved. But I mean, then again, everything now is done with computers. Obviously, everyone's heard the intros to these podcasts.
Yeah.
But it also brings up an interesting thing too. Like, you have bands that are, relevant now, and bands that are popular now, like Greta Van Fleet and Dirty Honey, where they kind of invoke these feelings, and they're able to have the older generations reminisce of these times of the classic rock bands. Obviously, they sound almost like carbon copies of you name it, Leonard Skinner, Led Zeppelin. That's the big one with those guys, and it's almost like they're trying to cater to this like movement. You know what I mean? And I guess that's probably why I'm not a giant fan of these bands. That, and I was never a giant fan of Led Zeppelin either. So it's just kind of like an instant turn off.
Well, when you say they try to cater to them, are they trying to cater, or are they just being influenced by them? if you talk to a lot of the newer musicians, the newer bands that are actual bands, and you say, well, who influenced you? And a lot of them will go back, Zeppelin, Rush, or the Beatles, and now they're saying their influences are bands like Metallica, or some more different grunge bands, or some more of the hip hop artists who were influenced by the older
those bands.
We're getting into the second and third generation of being influenced by.
Yeah,
because to play, you're listened to, and whether you want to admit it or not, you're being influenced by what you're listening to and what you hear, and so it still goes back to that era, because once there was the Beatles, then everything kind of changed, and people were listening to this classic rock, and they were being influenced by it. All these different styles that were coming out, so you're hearing a lot of people influenced, a lot of drummers. Listen to a lot of drummers. They sound like either
Bonham.
It's like he was influenced by Bonham. Listen to him. There isn't anything wrong with that. It's just he's playing because or they were influenced by Neil Peart, or they were influenced by a drummer that was influenced by Neil.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you're listening to these different styles, and you listen, and then you talk to these drummers. Bonham and Neil Peart, they were influenced by Buddy Rich.
Yeah, exactly.
So the influence just keeps going.
Well, it comes to a point to where it's like, are you paying homage to these acts, or are you trying to, that's how I feel about the particular two acts that I had mentioned, that I feel like it's just blatant rip-offs.
Yeah, you can. I was in an original progressive rock band, and we had very similar bands that we were influenced by, that we really liked.
Yeah.
Yes, Kansas, Styx. They were like these three bands that everybody in the band really liked. So when we started writing music and we started putting music together, we went back and listened to it, and we were like, that sounds like Kansas. And that sounds like Styx. We did it without even realizing it, because our influence, when you're writing music, your influence comes through whether you like it or not. And there's some artists who can write different albums in different genres. I mean, Billy Joel did that. He wrote one, paid an homage to 50s music. He wrote another one that paid homage to the Beatles, and he wrote the different albums. He was able to do that. But most artists, you can tell who they were influenced by, and it just comes out. Yeah. You can't really, unless you intentionally stop and say, no, I'm not going to write, I'm going to do something completely different. Yeah. And some artists can do that. But otherwise, your influences are going to come out whether you like it or not. It just happens that way. It's something when we listened to those songs back, and it was like, man, that sounds like Rush. It's like, yeah, we didn't even mean it to sound like Rush, but we all like Rush, and it kind of came out.
I wouldn't even find nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and even the synth sounds I was using, and some of the organ sounds, like, oh yeah, that's a Rick Wakeman organ sound. But hey, it's like, hey,
it works.
It works, and it's so you're influenced by these artists, and that seems to have been a big era. So that's why I call it classic, because it seems where a large number of genres were being created, and a large number of superstars were created that influenced the next generation. Mm-hmm. And they were influenced by the older musicians that were like the original musicians. I call them the original musicians from the 40s and the 50s. But then came all these superstars and all these bands and they later influenced these people. So, there's I'm just reading about it too. Billboard magazine, Rolling Stone magazine likes to be controversial. Talking about it, being oh yeah, well, it's white music and they didn't let the black music through and this, but there was there was the Jackson 5. There was these, there was, hip hop came out.
Yeah.
And even listen to Santana, the Latin influence. So everybody's influence was in there during that period. And it just was, but they like to say corporate America pushed the white music and all this stuff. And you listen to if you heard it, you like it, you listen to it, whether they told you to or not.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the whole part of the counterculture. That's why if you look at Woodstock, you look at the people who were going back to Woodstock, the different genres that were there. Everybody was there, from Sha Na Na, the doo-wop band, to Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, exactly.
And so everybody was represented. And so that's where I get the classic rock thing, where it was when all this was started and started branching off. And everything that happens today seems to have been rooted back in that era. And the thing that seems a little different to me is the 80s, when, again, it's technology. Technology has an effect on this also, because nowadays anybody can be a musician in their basement with a computer, and you spend $500 and come out with this loops and all this stuff, and but these musicians in that period of time had to work at their craft and really, really, really work at it, really work together. And that's why the music has lasted. I think it's lasted not because corporate America pushes it. I think it's lasted because it's really, really good music.
Exactly.
And it came from the heart, and it came from practice and a lot of hard work. And that's why it's still lasted. And that's why, you listen to 102.9 and you still hear Freebird. You still hear, and it's like what people want to hear.
Yeah.
They relate to it. It's great music, all that music from that time, Aerosmith, all those. It's just, that's where I get it from.
So I guess to kind of simplify it and put a pin in this topic. So I guess where my stance is with classic rock, I'm going to have to go with, it was the time. It was the span of music from, I'm not going to say from 60 to 2000. I will say 60 to 80. There's a 20-year span in there to where all kinds of, experimental and super influential music had come out. So I guess classic rock could be considered, I don't know, because that's the stalemate in this. Because you could say, oh, it's a genre, but within that classic rock genre, you have, Bruce Springsteen, you have Van Halen, you have Santana, you have Leonard Skinner, you have all this. So I guess classic rock would have to be considered a movement. I mean, that's the only, like I said, because you can't say it's a genre because there's so much underneath of it, and there's so many moving parts within, that. So I guess my stance is going to be that it's a movement.
And for me, it started in the 60s. The Beatles kind of changed things, and then once we got to Woodstock, and the counterculture and politics got involved, and it was exposed to that many people, that's when it started to branch out, and that just set it in motion to all these different genres, and the San Francisco side, and the New York side, and the Chicago, and all these bands coming out from all these different areas, and all being different. And that's when music was exploding. Up until, to me, it's like into like the mid 80s, and that's why I call it classic rock. It's just when all the different genres were created and seem to have been carried forward. And since then, the genres that were created, the major ones, like, there was the hair metal, but that went back to like kind of Van Halen polished.
Yeah.
You know, a polished Van Halen. And because to me, Van Halen brought back metal, you know, because it was kind of dying, you know. So, but that's my definition. It's the innovation that happened.
Okay.
And that during that period. And after that, everybody was influenced by what happened in that period. So what are they going to call this period? I don't know. Maybe 20 years from now, these people will get influenced by these people who got influenced by these people. Like you're saying, we're in the second or third generation.
Well, everything tends to come full circle anyway.
Yes.
It's only going to be a matter of time before we have another like Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think? What is classic rock to you? Do you consider it a movement? Do you consider it a genre? Do you consider it a point in time? You can get at us on our social media accounts. Facebook.com/RATM Podcast, Instagram and Twitter at RATM Podcast, or if those characters aren't enough, you can write us an email, ratmpodcast@gmail.com. But until then, we're going to get into our suggestions for this week. I'll start. My suggestion for this week, I know I have suggested the album before, but the band is Slaughter to Prevail. The song is called, the album is Costalome, released in 2021, and the song is Bratva. It has probably like one of the most like punishing, like brutal slam riffs that I've ever heard, and I recently just got back into them because they released a new single called 1984, which sounds absolutely nothing like anything else that would ever have the title 1984. But check out Bratva from Slaughter to Prevail. What do you got this week for us, Michael?
This band, the band is, I want to get this right. It's an all-girl band called Plush.
Okay.
And the singer was on one of these you know, the singer shows that's out there. And she is, I'm trying to find her and make sure I know her name.
Insert Jeopardy music here.
Yes. It's 4 women, and you can tell that
Singer, songwriter, guitarist Moira
Formica.
Yes.
The girls, they just rock. The drummer is just incredible. She's well known already around, and the bass player and the guitar player, they just really, really fit well together. And they have a couple songs. I think one was called Hate, which is just incredible. And the girl, I don't know, is it Mariah? I think it's, however you pronounce her name. She just belts it out.
Oh yeah,
and
you've shown me them. She's incredible.
And there, you can tell her influence. Getting back to influences, she was influenced by Heart, by Nancy and Ann Wilson, because she sings Barracuda.
Yeah, and she does it very well.
And she just the drummer, man, she's good.
Yeah,
and she drives the band, and they're I don't know how many albums they have out yet, but I know that the new one, that new song Hate, I think this is their only album. But you got to listen to this band because they just rock. They really rock, and when you watch them in video and you listen to them, you actually have to smile because like these girls they just got it.
Oh yeah,
they got it, and it's like you have to they draw you in once you start listening to them, and it's very rare that you get a band like that, and
yeah,
and they're just good. They're that good.
Awesome. I think one of the next times you come on the show, I'm gonna have to get you to watch Metal: A Headbanger's Journey. I'm telling you that this documentary, I've talked about it time and time again. It's actually one of the main influences that started this show, the idea for this show. But yeah, definitely one of the next times that you come over, we're gonna have to watch it, or you're gonna have to watch it and then we'll talk about it. It's a good one because I did like this topic a lot. And I would like to be able to do more of these genre-based topics, too. But, yeah, so that's another episode of Rage Against the Mainstream podcast for the books. Once again, if you want to get in touch with us, you can find us on our social media accounts. Facebook.com/RATM Podcast, Instagram and Twitter at RATM Podcast, and our email, ratmpodcast@gmail.com. Make sure you tune in next week. We will not have a scheduled, topic-based episode, but we will have an interview that is definitely on the top of my list. If you're a guitar hero, I think you'll really enjoy this one. So, once again, this is another episode of Rage Against the Mainstream podcast for the books. Thank you for listening. As always, I'm Bill.
Yes, and I'm Michael.
Have a good night, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.